For the previous the talk we just concluded, I had selected 8 passages and I was able to do only 2. And for this talk, I have selected only 2 passages. I hope I will be able to do these 2. Now, this talk is not in direct continuation of what I said during the second talk. This is a slightly different subject, different theme, because in these 3 cantos that we are now looking at, there is such great wealth, such great spiritual treasure, that I would like to present to you an unorthodox approach, view to spirituality. Spirituality is not basically doing things. It consists of being what you are primarily. Now, it is possible to get hints from these lines of poetry here about the right kind of attitude one takes in living one's life. So, in Sri Aurobindo's parlance, there is nobody who is not a yogi. We are all yogis. Some people are aware of the fact you are yogi, some people are not aware of it, that's all. A yogi is one who is aware of this fact that he is participating in this nature's yoga. The yoga is nature's evolution. So as long as you are a part of nature, you are doing yoga. It's whether you are conscious of it, you are not conscious of it. So if you look at yoga in this wider perspective, then there is a certain attitude which becomes very important in living one's life. Now, one of the things I found very illuminating here is the insistence that again and again we are told, don't try and to find a logic, a complete, coherent logic in terms of the external events of your life. So many things happen to us, triumphs, defeats, sorrows, great joy, and we try to piece them all together and try to see a pattern in life. Oh, I am now undergoing this particular kind of suffering. I ask myself, what did I do to deserve this? When you try to put together surface facts of life and try to find a logic in them, very often you will find there is no logic. Because the surface happenings in life are in all cases determined by the need of your inner being. Once one realizes it, that whatever happens to us on the surface of life is all that is needed to happen, that had to happen because of an inner need. And if you can then try to understand your life in terms of this inner being and his growth, including how long you will live, when you will die, are all determined by the inner need of your being. Our mind is in love with ignorance and therefore would like to perpetuate whatever condition it finds itself in forever and ever. But there is the inner being. Its needs our mind cannot recognize, normally doesn't recognize, because we have not even admitted to ourselves that there is this inner being. Once you turn your attention to inner being, there is no accident in life. Everything falls in place and you find there is a logic for everything that happens in life. There is nothing like a chance happening. Everything is determined, but according to the needs of the inner life. So, the real secret of life is to be found when you relate yourself to inner life, its needs. Outward happenings have their reason within. Outward happenings in life do not always have their reason outside. This is the mistake we make. I am so capable, why do I fail? So and so is such an nincompoop, why does he succeed? These are the questions we normally ask and make ourselves miserable and come to the conclusion either God's scales are all topsy-turvy or he doesn't have a right sense of values. This is what the poet says here on page 52. About middle of that page. All that transpires on earth and all beyond are parts of an illimitable plan. The one keeps in his heart and knows alone. Our outward happenings have their seed within. Our outward happenings have their seed within. Anything that happens to you, success, happiness, joy, fortune, misfortune, whatever, the reason for it is always within. Our outward happenings have their seed within, and even this random fate that imitates chance. Fate looks like random fate. It doesn't seem to have any plan, any scheme. It's random. And it's all a matter of chance. It's a matter of chance. By that we mean there is no logic. It's a matter of chance. There, the poet says, even this random fate that imitates chance, this mass of unintelligible results are the dumb graph of truths that work unseen. There are great truths of inner life which we haven't learned to read, and therefore we are baffled by life's outward circumstances. The laws of the unknown create the known. The laws of inner life, which we don't know, create the known. The events that shape the appearance of our lives are a cipher of subliminal quiverings. They are all below the threshold of your consciousness, subliminal, are a cipher of subliminal quiverings which rarely we surprise or vaguely feel, are an outcome of suppressed realities that hardly rise into material day. The real life that we live is the life of the inner being. But since we have no way of understanding this, no way of seeing what that life is, we concentrate our attention on the outward facts of life and try to find in it a logic, a system, a coherence, which we normally do not find and are baffled. They are born from the spirit sun of hidden powers, digging a tunnel through emergency. But who shall pierce into the cryptic gulf and learn what deep necessity of the soul determined casual deed and consequence? What you regard as a casual happening. Oh, this, we don't know how this happened to that man. He was just going his motorcycle this way and truck came. Just casual. Can't explain this. This is all a mystery. He is now lying bandaged hand and foot in the hospital. We don't know. There is no reason why this should happen to him. The poet says, but who shall pierce into the cryptic gulf and learn what deep necessity of the soul. It's a deep necessity of the soul, he says, determined casual deed and consequence. What you think as casual, oh, this just happened, I don't know how it happened. I was going by the train, suddenly it got uncomfortably warm. I opened the window, I forgot, my purse was also there. 10 minutes later I wake up, my purse is gone, along with it my ticket is gone. Oh, I must be very stupid not to remember this. You are not. If you really look within, it is some inner thing that has determined the outer act. Absorbed in a routine of daily acts, our eyes are fixed on an external scene. Naturally, we only see the external things of life, the surface phenomena of life, and in terms of this, we try to understand everything. We hear the crash of the wheels of circumstance and wonder at the hidden cause of things. What must have caused this? Why this misfortune? Or why this good fortune? Yet, a foreseeing knowledge might be ours if we could take our spirit stand within. Yet, you will be able to understand this, you will be able to foresee this need, if only you could take your spirit stand within. If we could hear the muffled demon voice, too seldom is the shadow of what must come cast an instant on the secret sense, which feels the shock of the invisible. What about people like you and me? Even Sri Aurobindo says that before he was arrested by the British and sent to the jail for 1 year, the Alipur bomb case, he says, 2-3 months before that, I had an inner feeling that I must give up whatever I was doing. A time had come in my life when I must spend all the time I have looking within, pursuing whatever he had taken up now, his inner life, his spiritual life, whatever. But he said, I felt somehow that the work I was doing, after all I was doing the work for the country, for the nation. This is a very important work. How can that be an obstacle to the spiritual work that I am supposed to do? But lo and behold, I just dismissed this, either because I loved this work too much. Fate intervened in the form of the British police. I was arrested, put behind the bars for 1 year. This turned out to be my cave of tapasya. I needed it. So, if we turn within and are sensitive to the inner needs, then you very often find that all that is happening to you at the outer level itself has no meaning, except in terms of its value for your inner growth. Too seldom is the shadow of what must come cast in an instant on the secret sense, which feels the shock of the invisible, and seldom in the few who answer give. The mighty process of the cosmic will communicates its image to our sight, identifying the world's mind with ours. Now, I would like you to move on to another passage which I think is a wonderful passage on page 59. This is one of my favorites because, as I always keep saying, one of the great things that Savitri does is it keeps beaming, as it were, radiating, as it were, waves of hope, waves of optimism, waves of courage, waves of love. That's why in my very first talk I said the writing of Savitri in itself is a very, very significant event. By writing Savitri, Sri Aurobindo inundated, as it were, the earth atmosphere with these vibrations of hope, when all around 20th century man is despairing about man's future, seems to be almost in love with death. At that time, Sri Aurobindo was writing Savitri day after day, bringing out better in several versions of it. In doing this, what he has done, he has inundated the earth atmosphere with these vibrations of hope. And one such passage which holds out this tremendous message of hope and says, Mabhi, don't fear, is this passage on page 59. And it is attitude like this, life lived with this kind of an attitude, that is really the spiritual life. That is living your external life all the time with an eye turned within and asking yourself, the real life is the inner life. External life is simply a surface manifestation determined by the needs of the inner life and its growth. This passage, you really don't need to know the context of it. It is in itself very self-sufficient. It begins very casually. Alive in a dead, rotating universe, we whirl not here upon a casual globe, abandoned to a task beyond our force. It's a series of negations. He says, don't think that we are here alive on a dead, rotating universe. Oh, this is a dead universe, helplessly going round and round the sun, and will keep going round the sun until someday the sun himself loses all his heat and power, and the entire universe is going to crash. We are not living in that kind of a universe. You don't have to be so pessimistic. Alive in a dead, rotating universe, we whirl not here upon a casual globe. This is not a casual globe. Understand the word casual? As a matter of, it's a joke and also seriously intended. The word casual is a very Indian word. Because casual leave, you get only in India. You don't get anywhere else. You ask the British or Americans, what is casual leave, they ask. Casual leave simply means just don't go and then apply for leave, that's all. That's casual leave. So this is not a purposeless globe. It's not a casual globe, as many people would like to say. This entire universe came out as a series of blind accidents. One accident led to another accident. One accident led to another accident. So finally one day, suddenly from the chimpanzee, there jumped this man, all ready-made with his mind and so on. And all these are accidents. So this is, some people tell us, this is a casual globe. There is no purpose to it. There is no way. There is no truth. There is nothing to find out. Human life has no significance. How you live your life doesn't at all matter. Whether you live or you die is immaterial. Some people are telling us this is that kind of a world, and the poet is saying, no, alive in a dead, rotating universe, we whirl not here upon a casual globe, abandoned to a task beyond our force. And don't think that the task given to you here is beyond your force. When God gives you work, He also gives you the capacities and the power needed to do that work. And what is the task given to us? The task given to us is to manifest the divine perfection in a material form. We don't have the capacity to do it. You have it. How do you find it? By engaging yourself. You get the power, you get the capacities as you apply yourself, as you struggle towards that. It's not given to you in advance, like bank deposit. I'll give you 50,000 rupees, you do whatever it is. You get this power, you get these capacities as you bend yourself, as you strain yourself. This is the ideal. Manifest the divine perfection in a material body. That's the task. And it's not as if we are abandoned to this task and just God has forgotten all about it. So, notice how many negations are there. We are not alive here on a dead rotating universe. We are not whirling here on a casual, meaningless globe. We are not abandoned here by God to a task for doing which we do not have the necessary power. All these are negations. And then the poet goes, even through the tangled anarchy called fate, even through the tangled anarchy called fate, and through the bitterness of death and fall, an outstretched hand is felt upon our lives. We are all such tiny, helpless creatures in the jaws of fate, in the jaws of circumstance. What can you do? That's what people say. The poet says, even, he says, all right, I don't want to enter into an argument now with you. Let us assume there is something called fate. All right. Let us also assume that this fate is anarchic. You understand anarchic? There is no rule of law, like in some states in India right now. Let us say fate is like that. Even through the tangled, what kind of anarchy is it? Not just anarchy, but tangled anarchy. You decide which state best qualifies for this. Tangled anarchy. So even through the tangled anarchy called fate, and through the bitterness of death and fall, what can be more bitter than the death of a loved one? Even that, the poet says, I do admit there is something called the bitterness that comes out of death, man's fall. Yet, I would like to assure you, an outstretched hand is felt upon our lives. There is always the outstretched guiding hand that is behind you, pushing you, prodding you, supporting you. Now the question is, if the hand is doing all these things, how come I am in this miserable shape and miserable form? How is it at every other step I stumble and fall? Why does this happen? What is this? What does this hand do? Let us listen to the poet, what he says. It is near us in unnumbered bodies and births. He says, don't think that this extended hand is the result of the 8th 5-year plan. It has been with us in unnumbered bodies and births. Ever since you decided to take birth on this earth, since then it has been always there behind you. It is near us in unnumbered bodies and births. All right? It has been there, but what is it doing? It's a dumb hand, doesn't seem to be doing anything at all. Let us listen to the poet. He says, in its unslackening grasp, very firm grasp, in its unslackening grasp, it keeps for us safe the one inevitable supreme result. No will can take away and no doom change. Nothing on earth can frustrate the plan of this outstretched hand. It keeps for you very safe. What is it it's keeping very safe? The one inevitable supreme result. No will can take away and no doom change. You are not telling me what exactly it is. You are only saying You're raising our expectation. What is this supreme, inevitable result it is holding in its hands? The poet says, the crown of conscious immortality. The realization that we are all amritasya putraha, we are all children of immortality. We are not beggars who have to take a handful of currency notes, going begging for happiness. In which shop can I buy happiness? Which supermarket? Oh, this supermarket has 5 floors. On the 5th floor I get this. 4th floor I get this kind of happiness. 3rd floor I get this kind of happiness. You are yourself happiness personified. You are yourself Satchidananda. You don't have to go begging for happiness. You don't have to go for shopping for happiness. This crown of conscious immortality, this hand is holding for you. You just have to offer your head. It will be on your head. It is holding it firmly. It's guaranteed you will wear it. What's the problem? Problem is we don't want this crown of conscious immortality. I have my own agenda. God must take note of this agenda. What is it? You know, the usual agenda. I have my plans for my sons, my plans for my daughters, my plan for retirement, my plan for income tax, what shares I must buy, God must, in fact, if at all there is a guiding hand, it must guide me to the right share broker. What do I do with the crown of immortality? That's the problem. We want finite things, and God wants to give us the infinite. When you get the finite things, what happens? 2 things can happen. Either you don't get it, and you keep pining for it, like most Indians, getting a house before you retire, buying a second-hand Maruti car before you retire. That's the end of life. You have to wait for it right from the age of 22 until you retire, which is 58 and 60. Oh, you will come one day, it will come, one day it will come. So when it comes, what happens? You'll find the car doesn't run. The house that you bought, the housing board cheated you. So in the monsoon season, it leaks. In summer, it's like an oven. This kind of thing can happen. Or it can happen as it happens in some Western countries. All your material dreams are fulfilled at the age of 20. Now where do you go from here? An Indian can wait until he is 58 to feel completely disillusioned. But where there is material affluence, at the age of 20, all the entire story is finished. You have your house, you have your car, you have everything, you have gone to Switzerland, there is no more holiday resort left. Goa beaches are all what they are now. So either our agenda never gets fulfilled and we keep waiting for it. The worst thing is that can happen, your agenda is immediately fulfilled and still you find this was not what you wanted. Why does this happen? Because the only thing that can ever satisfy the human hunger, the human aspiration, is this infinity, this crown of conscious immortality, that this extended hand is guiding you towards. Please go in this direction. You are saying, no, I want to go in this direction. So he says, the crown of conscious immortality, the Godhead promised to our struggling souls when first man's heart dared death and suffered life. There's an interesting idea here. Before you and I came here, we all were there, up there. And one day, God opens the door of the heavens and says, would you like to go there? Where? Down there on earth. No, I have heard terrible stories about this earth. I won't go there. It's a terrible place. Then God is very persuasive. So as you go there, I take the responsibility of bringing you back. It's my responsibility. How do I trust you? I give it to you in writing. So God has given it to us in writing. You go there, it is my responsibility to bring you back. We have come here. We have forgotten where we came from. We like this so much here, we don't want to go back. He is bound to his contract. So he is worried this chap has gone there and forgotten me, where he goes from. So what do I do? The hound of heaven chases you wherever you go. Whether you are hidden in the Buckingham Palace or you hide yourself in the slums of Calcutta, you cannot find relief from the hound of heaven. That's why he says, the Godhead promised to our struggling souls when first man's heart dared death and suffered life. He is always there looking for us. There is a story you must all have read, those of you who read Reader's Digest. It must have some European source. Somebody is talking to God and says, God, I have reviewed my life, and on the shores of life, on the sands of life, I find 4 footprints. Thank you very much for being with me, walking with me always. The 4 footprints being 2 of mine and 2 of God's. We always walk together. But God, I have looked very carefully at this track record, and I found on certain occasions there are only 2 steps, not 4. And I consulted my diary. I found that these tracks belong to a time when I was passing through great ordeals and suffering. Why is it when there are great ordeals and suffering, your footprints are missing? Where do you disappear? God says, true, you find only 2 footprints, but let me tell you, they are not yours, they were mine. Where was I? You were in my arms. This is something we have to realize, that this hound of heaven, this extended hand, always guides us, always tries to persuade us, cajole us, push us in the direction where we find the crown of conscious immortality waiting for us. Why it is taking time? Why there are all these inevitable years of suffering is that we seem not to want the crown of conscious immortality strongly enough. Oh, I want several other things and also the crown of conscious immortality. That won't do. So he says, one who has shaped this world is ever its Lord. This is a statement the poet makes. He says, never ever doubt whether God takes a holiday and maybe goes on a European jaunt. When the business becomes very difficult here, God takes a holiday. He doesn't do that. Nor does he take an afternoon siesta. God is always awake. Anything that happens in this world, you may not like it, that's a different matter. It may not be to your taste, it may not be to your comfort, it may not be to your convenience. But if it happens in this world, He must have allowed it, because He is always the Lord of this universe. One who has shaped this world is ever its Lord. But what about the mistakes I make? My sins, my acts of omission and commission, what about them? Poet says, our errors are His steps upon the way. He has foreseen every stumble and every fall that you are going to make. And He knows how to make use of this fall so that you rise to a greater height. Every time you fall, He makes that as a kind of springboard so that you come up higher. When you look back on life, very often you find what you regarded as great successes at that moment are not really the successes. What you regard very often as great misfortunes, 20 years later, 30 years later, you look upon that event and you find, because that thing happened, I was able to do such and such a thing. My life took a sudden turn. So these so-called errors, in God's way, there are no errors. There may be detours. You may take a little detour here and there, but there are no ultimate errors. He works through the fierce vicissitudes of our lives. How does God work? Does He work in the meditation room, puja room, in temples? No. He works through all the fierce vicissitudes of your life. Whenever you are facing any fierce situation in life, danger, any kind of a situation, there God is working through those situations. He works through the hard breath of battle and toil. And finally He says, He works through our sins and sorrows and our tears. When all alone at night you shed your tears on your lonely pillow, never forget that He is there behind you. He works through all these. He knows right now this is a very unpleasant, unhappy, miserable time you are having. He knows this, but He also knows why you have to have this. He is behind each step, every happening in life. His knowledge overrules our nescience. God doesn't grant all our prayers. He grants only those prayers which He thinks are good for us. He doesn't grant those which are harmful for us. Prayers not granted are very often a greater grace than the prayers granted, because we don't even know what to ask. And therefore, the highest prayer can only be, let Thy will be done. When your will becomes one with the divine's will, and say, let Thy will be done. And therefore He says, His knowledge overrules our nescience. Whatever the appearance we must bear. After all these things, there are still some people in the audience who are not convinced. You say, oh, you have said all these things, but you don't know how miserable my life has been. You have not taken that into consideration. The poet says, please, I know some lives are particularly blighted. I know this. And therefore he says, whatever the appearance we must bear, whatever our strong ills and present fate, however difficult the present fate may be, when nothing we can see but drift and bail, Remember, a mighty guidance leads us still through all. There is always a mighty guidance that is overseeing this, that is leading you through all these things. Whatever the appearance we must bear, whatever our strong ills and present fate, when nothing we can see but drift and bail, a mighty guidance leads us still through all. After we have served this great divided world, God's bliss and oneness are our inborn right. This world was created out of great joy by the Lord. And that joy is our birthright. That joy and oneness, he says, are our inborn right. These days, nothing is final until you have made an appointment, right? You have to write it down in your diary. I have to, such and such thing is going to happen. Only then we think, we all are diary keeping these days, so we must have a diary. So before he concludes this, the poet assures us, after we have served this great divided world, God's bliss and oneness our inborn right, a date is fixed in the calendar of the unknown. Date of what? An anniversary of the birth sublime. Your rebirth into this sublime life. When you will look into the mirror and find yourself not this miserable creature always in the form of a beggar or a seeker of happiness, but radiating happiness, radiating immortality, realizing your real nature. That's the birth sublime. And the date for it, he says, a date is fixed in the calendar of the unknown, an anniversary of the birth sublime. Our soul shall justify its checkered walk. And on that day, if you review your life, you will find you never wasted 1 minute. God never really allowed you to make a mistake, because what you at that time thought a mistake, what at that time you thought was a waste of time, was not that, because it probably was a waste of time if your goals were different. If your goals are really these, wearing this crown of conscious immortality, then our soul shall justify its checkered walk. All will come near, that now is not or far. Now this is a passage I generally read to people. This is a kind of abhaya mantra. Nothing need frighten you in life. All that you have to do is to be conscious of the divine guidance that is available in all situations, in all circumstances. And the secret of this is, the ultimate secret of all success is, let thy will be done. I think we'll stop here.